Everything is personal right here. Everything is personal right here.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Everything is Personal. And today, our guest is Catherine Crestani. How you doing, Kath?
I'm great, Len. How are you?
Um, Great. I'm in LA. It's a wonderful day. It's beautiful weather. It usually is nice in LA anyway. But I wanted to talk to you about your journey. I find it fascinating. I did a little bit of research, but I wanted to ask you a question about uh, you. I think, and I'm paraphrasing, or maybe I'm quoting if I got it wrong, but you said something about describing yourself as a soul with many hats and depending on the day of the week. So I'm curious, which hat are you wearing most joyfully right now?
Truthfully, right now. Ah, well, I guess there's two. So the first one would be like a mum because that is my priority because I love being a mum and I missed out on so much of being a mum, like being absorbed running companies and things like that. So I really enjoy that role and stepping more into that role. But the second role that I love is actually um being a person's supporter and challenger. And for most people, they're like, oh, so you're their coach. And it's like, yes, but it's more than that because it's like when you become really invested in your client's role, you're supporting them on their journey, but you're also challenging them because sometimes we get stuck in our own head and we need someone else to pull us out and and to see people blossom and to be able to tune into where they need to go next is really really powerful. And I have to say I do love that. I love seeing when they get something or have that aha moment or they get these achievements and it's not your achievement, but you have like that proud mummy moment. Again, coming back to that mum thing, right? You're like, yeah, you did it. Yeah, keep going, but celebrate that. Otherwise, you won't get the dopamine hit, but keep going. So I do love that aspect of my life too.
It's so interesting you bring that up because I used to be a coach in my previous life, and the title coach. I live in
Mm.
LA and Cal. Every other person is a coach, and it creates this negative connotation because yes, there's certificational, but I like the way you put this. I think I was at a Tony Robbins event a long time ago, and he was talking about this thing about how it's reciprocal. So you get the dopamine hit because you're doing something for somebody else. Their success is your success. So it feeds you, makes you want to do more. So when you combine, you join together, and you have this accountability relationship, you're holding them accountable, they achieve, it makes you feel like you did something well to help them, and it's reciprocal. Everybody rises to that. But how do you differentiate yourself? Because this title of coach to,
Mm.
for people to do due diligence, say, well, how is Catherine different than, Len, than Tony Robbins, and anybody else?
That's the trickiest thing, right? Because you're so right. Because I talk to so many people and they're like, "Oh, you're just another coach," and I didn't do a certification or anything like that. But I realized through my whole career, I've been coaching people my whole life. It's just this word has this stigma around it because I was training students, I was training other speech language pathologists, I was training my staff, I was constantly coaching and training them, and then I'm like, well, I'm actually really good at this, and then, I could grow businesses and I could help other people grow businesses. And so it's through those life experiences, and I feel that's for anyone that makes people different. But there's so many people in the world, and you'll just find the right person that clicks for you. And I know that's the case for me because I knew I needed someone to support me and challenge me. And, I started with this one coach, and she was lovely, and I did everything she told me to because I am that A grade student. I have to get the gold star. That's me. And nothing worked. Nothing worked. Like I did, and I was so disappointed because I really put my all in. I built this website in a month. I got courses out, like I did all the things. And I didn't get a single person. I was like, what is going on here? This doesn't make sense. So I kept searching, and I was financially strapped at the time. So I was doing lots of free stuff as well. So I was really savvy, and I was like, but I'm the person that does the free stuff, but then applies it, so it's not everybody does that. And a lot of people don't even show up to the free stuff, which is, again, is a reflection of your life. And then I stumbled across my coach, and I just knew I wanted to work with him, and I knew the money would show up when I needed it to. And it did, because he was like aligned with me, and his life story resonated with me so much, but also how he came across. And I think that's what makes every coach unique, is we all have a different backstory, and we all have a different perspective on how to work with things. But the biggest thing I noticed with working with my coach, which is also how I work with my clients, is you can't just work on the mindset, because the mindset is not enough. Because you can say, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. But then when crap hits the fan, you need the energy behind that to back you up, because your flaws and your triggers are going to come up again. No matter how many times you think you've worked through that self-doubt, it doesn't shift, because it's always going to be there. You just befriend it, and you become nicer friends with it. And that's, I think, the different thing that I do. And then I can use my intuitive gifts as well. And that's what makes me a bit different to other coaches, because I won't go to you, oh, what's eating you up today? That most of my clients sit in front of me. I'm like, oh, what is this? I said, what's going on? Like, okay, this is what I can see, blah, blah, blah. And then I'll tap in that way. And then we can work on it from a different perspective. So it's almost like we're combining your body with your energy, your mind, and then we're bringing in the soul of it and the actual business part of it. Because a lot of people forget what happens in your business is a reflection of you, because when you're crumbling and falling out apart inside, your business tends to fall apart as well.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think I'm going to go into your origin story and talk about like some of the uh, maybe rock bottom, some of the moments that you had. But you brought up an interesting point that when I kind of unpack a little bit, it's this notion of taking action. And a lot of
Mhm.
coaches and teachers, there's a difference between, teaching and coaching. There's this kind of accountability. And I agree with you 100%. I went, I had many different coaches in my life, and I was in this Anthony Robbins Institute, and they gave me a coach, my first or second. And it's not that we didn't align, we aligned, and it was great. But for me, I wanted somebody who is a Richard Branson level. I know there's only one, but somebody who's achieved so much and achieved beyond what I have achieved, so I can follow their breadcrumb trail that they left behind, and they can help me ascend to that level. And if I have somebody who's at my level, that was for me. I didn't think it was challenging. I didn't think they had the experience enough. So in your journey, I think it's this, yes, it's mindset. You're absolutely right. But it also is action. So how do you get somebody to take action, specific action, and what they need to do, and then hold them accountable to that action?
I kick their butts, Len. No.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. And it is holding them accountable. So, after each session we have, this is the benefit of starting to add AI into it, because you can record conversations and things like that, which I love, because then you can actually focus in the session. But the beautiful thing is that they create like next step lists. So when I meet with them again, I'm like, all right, have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? And most of the clients I work with are like, oh, I didn't do it. And because they're working through this like nice girl or nice boy syndrome where they want to appease everybody, it kind of makes them go, oh crap, like she's actually checking in on us and holding us accountable, and she's kind of being nice about it, but at the same time I feel really guilty because I haven't done it. So I'm there every step of the way saying, have you done this? Have you done this? Because you can't get to the next point unless you get to a certain thing. Like I have a client trying to start a business. She doesn't even have a website or any front door. I'm like, how do you think people are going to find you? I said, I don't care. Pick a social media platform. Make a website, whatever. But at the moment, no one can come and find you because people want proof of who you are. And, so the other thing I encourage people to do is to create better habits, and actually look at their day. And because so many especially because I work with a lot of mums, we're time poor and I get it, but where in your day are you losing time to things that don't even matter? Are you spending 20 minutes picking what you want to wear for the day? Well, I've got a solution for that. Let's teach you how to intuitively do that. Are you spending, an hour at a cafe to pick a meal? I can't stand those people. I'm the person that goes there and orders like really quickly because I'm like, come on, let's eat, let's talk, let's eat and keep going, and it's about, also showing them through my examples too, because I don't just say, I'll just do this and I don't do it myself. Because if you're the person leading another person, you need to be 10 steps ahead of them and show, hey, this is what works. This is what I do. And if you apply these actions as well, then you can get there as well. Because if they can't see someone else has already done it and gotten the success, then they're not going to want to do it themselves.
Yeah, lead by example, 100%. I wanted to go back and go into your origin story a little bit. So, where did you grow up?
So I grew up outside of like in Western Sydney, in Australia. That's where I'm from. And now I currently live south of Sydney in Australia. And, I had a really hardworking dad, and he was an accountant, or still is an accountant actually. And that's kind of where I got an understanding for business, because every school holidays when I was older, and even in between when I was at university, and every large break that we got, I would go work for him. So I knew how to run a business financially by the time I was like in my early 20s, and then when I graduated as a speech language pathologist, my vision was, yep, one day I'm going to have my own business, I'm going to, that was my big aspiration, and we'll see where we go, because I loved working with kids. And my first job was really interesting. It was some very low socioeconomic areas in Sydney. And it opened my eyes. And I have to say, I was no longer sheltered anymore. Like and I was very strong at that first point, because I remember one of the jobs I had to go to home visits in this very questionable area. And I remember as like this little young 20-year-old going, so you're sending me into a house you've never been to in this area known for notorious activities, and there's no safety plan, and they're like, oh, yeah. So I learned very early on to start to champion to myself, and I got married at some point in there too. And then I've been working for 2 years, and I just wasn't happy working. I'd left that first job actually in the low socioeconomic
So,
area
do,
because
do
they
you
were
mind?
asking me to do questions.
I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but I want to go back to the childhood a little bit, and
Oh,
go
yeah.
through some. Uh, and I do want you to pick back up from your pathology job,
No,
etc.
good.
But you have siblings?
I do. I'm the eldest, and I'm the black sheep. So
Ah,
I was the one always, but yeah, I was always the one batting down the doors, challenging my parents. I definitely challenged my parents, because we were like, that Italian, um, Catholic household. We weren't super Catholic, but there was still that underlying thing, which was very interesting. So I challenged them a lot. Like, even though I was a really high achiever at school, I still wanted my freedom. Like, I still wanted to be able to go out and hang out with my friends. And my parents had this kind of fear, which I understood, because I had a very traumatic birth story in that as well, to the point that my mum nearly died, I nearly died, like all these things kind of happened. So I understand now why they were so protective, and why, but I was very clever at getting around a lot of things, and, constantly rebelling against things. And that's been my whole life. Like, well, you're going to tell me no, I'm going to prove you wrong, which actually can be my demise. Sometimes it's kind of my Achilles heel, because at the same time, sometimes it's like, you're telling me no, maybe I should have listened and actually done the no. But my brain went, no, I'm going to prove you wrong. But my whole childhood too was very much about fixing things. I felt like I had to be the fixer. I felt like I had to be the peacekeeper, and I had to make sure everyone was okay in the family. And that, I remember there was a saying that kept coming up, like, don't rock the boat.
yeah.
Like, I couldn't say what I really wanted to say, because as much as I was challenging and doing things, I just go do it anyway and not actually say anything. That's how I learned to just get around things. And, when I was younger, my sister would want a toy and I'd give it over. But then my brother came along because my sister's the middle, and she would try and do that with my brother, and my brother would fight her and be like, "No, you're not having my toy." And my mum actually commented, "Oh, you were such a good child. You just gave her everything." So guess what? If I'm a good person, I'm going to give people and give people and give people and not actually receive anything. So that was a big thing that I had to work through as
Yeah,
well.
you're being depleted from yourself and nothing left because giving
Yeah,
is your connection to receiving love. So you give, you receive love, but you're not replenishing yourself because you're giving everything you
exactly.
have. I'm curious about you as a like speech pathology and what you want. Was that something that you really wanted to do, or is growing up you had other interests and other things that you were kind of gravitating towards?
Well, I knew I always wanted to work with children because I had this natural affinity. Like I'm the person that would walk into the shops and all the kids would look at me. Now I know why, because I just have a nice kind of energy and that sort of thing, and I calm kids, but I just knew I wanted to work with children because I always found them fascinating. But I knew I didn't want to be a teacher, and I had aspirations of being a pediatrician. And I'm so grateful now I'm not a pediatrician, but I understand why I had that affinity because I just really wanted to help people. Like that was the biggest thing. Because again, giving, giving, giving. But it was my mum actually, and she said, why don't you do like speech language pathology? Like you can work with kids, they earn decent money, it's one-on-one. And I was like, oh yeah, that does sound much better. So again, fully committed, jumped in, became an ambassador for it when I was at university, like so many things. And I was like, yeah, okay, this fits. And it did at the time, but I still remember very early on in my career, my business partner going, I can do this every day of my life. Like I am so fueled by this. And then something in the back of my head's like, I don't think I can, because as much as it was beautiful, and I still love working with children, but as much as it was beautiful being able to help them communicate, there's this soul urge, right? There's something more, there's something more, there's something more. So I thought, oh, it's building a business. So, then I dive into that thinking that's going to fill that void. And then my business partnership fell apart. So I had built another company in the background. I'm like, okay, no, 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 no. It's my own business. I'm going to fuel my own business. And again, like talking to you, Len, it's so obvious that I fell into that trap of giving, 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 giving. And my business ended up being like that too, giving, 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 giving. You can only give for so long before you burn out. So it was always this niggle that there was something else that I should be doing. And I kept filling it up with the wrong things. And I didn't know what it was until then I started my spiritual journey.
So what at what point was there, and I don't know, I'll say it's like a rock bottom moment, but it may not be, but what was that moment that was the tipping point that you said, this is it, whether it's divorce. I also went through a divorce. I know what that's like. You lose your business, people turn, like there's a moment where there's sort of a crossroad, like you either take this road or you take that road, and this is the road of self-pity and you can stay in it, or you're going to go and do something else. What was that moment and what action did you take at that time?
It's so funny. I've had four of those moments in my life, Len, but on all different aspects, right? So the first one was my first marriage. So I got divorced because I realized at some point that my whole life was pivoted around making my ex happy. And he never asked me to do that, but that's how I felt it should be. And I remember still that pivotal moment. I walked downstairs one morning, there was washing up piled in the sink. I'd been working till like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock the night before. And I was like, this man can't even look after himself. Why would I want to start a family with him? And it was such a small thing. And then a friend said to me, we were driving home, and he was showing me some music, and I love music. And I put it on hold. Like I just started liking everything my ex liked, which is so, if you start doing that and genuinely don't like what they like and make yourself like it, that's some red flags. Stop doing that. But, because you lose yourself completely. And my friend turned and said to me, I don't know who you are anymore. And I went, I don't either. So that started this self-questioning and self-awareness. And that's kind of what then led to me making choices to step out of my marriage. And it was only a few months out of that. And I was so happy. People were like, "Have you lost weight?" I was like, "Yeah, I've lost 90 kilos." That's what my ex used to weigh, right? And they're like, "What? When did you lose that?" I'm like, "Oh, actually, no, I'm getting divorced." And they're like, "I'm so sorry." I'm like, "I'm not." Like I was just in such a happy place. And it was in that space I actually met my husband now. And I wasn't even looking because when you're not looking for these things but you're living up to your true self, then you do attract things that you deserve, including people. you know and then because I was happy then in my personal life, then my business partnership started to fall apart, right? Because I could see all the cracks that were there. And it was my husband actually that pointed out to me and said, every time you bring up a complaint to her, she'll buy you a gift. And I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Every time you bring up an issue or highlight something, she'll buy you something and then you forget about it." And I'm like, "Oh my goodness, she does." And, that was her way of trying to make it up to me. But at the same time, it wasn't solving anything. So the cracks just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's like putting drywall on, but not actually fixing what's happening underneath. So the crack just keeps getting bigger. And I call that my toxic divorce because how we ended and how it was really, really crazy part of my life. So that felt a bit, and I was pregnant at the time too. So I felt very rock bottom at that point. And then I was building this company and it got to this point where, I was in chronic stress. I was having panic attacks and anxiety and suffering from adrenal fatigue. I was seeing my naturopath every week with like a box of supplements, basically to keep me alive. Like it was basically survival. And, and I was said it like I was working 24/7 because I'd go to bed and I'd wake up and have this massive to-do list I'd have to do. And then I learned that magic function called delay send on emails. So instead of writing out the to-do list, I started sending all the emails. So at like 2, 3 in the morning, I'm there like working already. I go back to sleep for an hour and get up. And you can't keep functioning that way. And my body was not coping. And I'm still searching too, right? So at this point, I'm still like, there's still something. I'm still not fulfilled. I'm still not fulfilled. And I made my business rely on me for everything, like everything. Like I remember going away for a weekend and them calling saying, "The mouse isn't working." And I'm like, "Change the batteries." "Oh, where are the batteries?" I'm like, "In the, like, just simple things like look in the drawers, like where they always are, but all these little things. And that's what I created. And I realized I created that because, like you said, I gave and I gave and I gave and I gave. And that's the model that I thought I had to live up to. And that was proving my worth, right? So when I was started my spiritual awakening at that point, and then my company started to fall apart. So I grown it quite significantly. I had like 8 staff working for me again, but I had no admin support. I had my husband helping, but he got the poops and got over it. So it was just me doing everything, like doing like I can't even describe how much I was doing. And if you ever building a company, that is not a smart way to build a company because you burn out. You can't keep doing it for that long. And I had 3 staff resign in a week. And I was on the floor crying because I'm there trying to reclaim my health. I'm trying to have more time with my family because I miss them. I'm trying to do all these things and I'm like, how am I going to find 3 staff? Because it's still really hard to find allied health staff in Australia to fit roles who are good too. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So I eventually got up off the floor and I kept going. And then a month later, another 3 staff resigned. And by this point, I'm really pissed at the universe. I'm there yelling at them at this rock. I go and meditate. And I'm like, "I'm doing the work. Why are you like doing this to me?" Like I was so angry. I remember yelling, so angry. And then a month later, another 3 resigned. And at that point, I went, "You know what? They're not meant to be in my life anymore, and neither is this company." But for months, my husband had been telling me to sell it. But it's just you have to come to terms with it yourself too, because anyone that's grown a business from scratch, it's like your baby, like you've put all your energy into it and everything like that. And you nourish it and you're like, "Oh, my baby's growing and I don't want to give up my baby." But really, I probably should have given up months and months before. But at the same time, you have to go through that purging and you have to go through that. So I would say, yeah, multiple rock bottom moments, but there's always a lesson in that. And if you can find the lesson really quickly, you can pull out of it quicker. So, like, by the third time, I was really okay. I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. I need new staff. So be it. I still haven't replaced the other six, but that's okay. We can figure that out. Yeah.
So you talked about a spiritual awakening. What did that entail? Like, you already mentioned meditation. Were there, psychedelics? Was there anything else that was involved in that spiritual awakening that you had that switch turn on?
Yeah, so I've always been intuitive, but I didn't know exactly what it was. So, there was moments that I can reflect back on my life now and I fully understand why things happened or how I felt or how I just knew things. But no one talked about it in my family. No one talked about like, hey, we have intuitive gifts or anything like that. So everyone was very silent in that front until they're not. But it was this curiosity. So I was seeing a Bowen therapist. So if anyone's curious what they are, they release the fascia to help your body reset the nervous system. And she said, "Hey, I'm running this group. Like, I feel like you should come along." And it was a meditation. And so we all had rapé, which is a form of tobacco mixed in with herbal remedies from I don't know exactly where in the world. It's not the most pleasant
South
experience because
America,
it
they
gets
blow it,
blown up your
yeah,
nose.
blow it up your nose. I have
Yeah.
the rapé like triangle thing that you blow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot what it's called. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah, exactly. The
It's very
pipe thing or
unpleasant.
whatever the
Very, yeah,
technical name is.
exactly.
It's very unpleasant. And they do both sides because one side's the death and one side's the life and
Yeah.
rebirth, right? So, but in this meditation, it was so easy for me to do. And we went and met our spirit animal, and I had a stag, which is very, very cool. And I'm like, oh, there must be more to this. So it piqued my curiosity, and I found it really easy to meditate and go in. And then I was seeing my naturopath again for my supplements, my weekly supplements. And I noticed that his partner had put this new offering on. And I said, "Oh, what's Carly doing?" That's his partner. And he goes, "Oh, you should do it." And I'm like, "Okay." I didn't even know what she was doing. I just said, "Okay," and what she basically did for me is stepped me through my spiritual awakening. She became my spiritual mentor. And so the first thing we did, like, she channeled for me. So if anyone's not sure what channel means, it means they tap into the universe, tap into your guides, because we all have spiritual guides, whether you want to talk about it or not. And then pulled this information through for me. And the first thing she said is, like, you have 4 spirit guides and one's a family member. And I almost started crying because I knew it was my great grandmother, because I was very, very close to her. And I always felt she was with me, even when she passed. Like, I couldn't shake that feeling. And so she led me to this meditation. I went to my higher self, oversoul, Holy Spirit, whatever resonates with people listening, the true version of you without all the crap attached. And I went up there, and there was my great grandmother, Len, sitting on this bench waiting for me. And it was the most beautiful, beautiful moment. And I'm like crying. And it was like, felt like coming home. That's what it felt like. I was like, this is what I've been missing my whole life. And every 2 weeks, I went back and I did the work because I'm like, I want to know more about this. And even Carly, my mentor, she's like, no one does what you do. No one actually does the work. She goes, but every 2 weeks you've been coming back and it's completely new because you're doing it. And so I did like past life work. I went back into past lives. I healed a whole heap of crap. But the more you heal, the more you unpack things, then your spiritual gifts start to unpack and unravel themselves. So my first thing was I started hearing things from people who had passed. And the first message was for my dad. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to listen to this because I didn't know how to approach my dad about it, right? Because we don't talk about these things, and we don't, it's very woo. And I lost my hearing. So I lost my hearing for a week because in that left ear, because I wouldn't listen to it. And so I finally sat down. My husband's like, you just need to do it. Just do it. And I'm like, okay. So I wrote this letter out that came through with the message. And I rang up my dad, and he's like, was this a dream? And I'm like, nope. And that would have been the easy way out, but I couldn't do that. I was like, nope. Like, I know I need to honor this. And So I shared the message with him and he was like, that is 100% your grandmother. There is no way you could have made that up. You wouldn't have known any of that. He goes, "Can you do it again?" So I did. And at the end, he's like, okay. I said, do you want me to take a photo of it? He goes, nope, I've got it. He goes, burn the thing and don't tell anybody you can do this. So protective dad jumps in, right? So, and I was like, okay, fair enough, but I am not going to not tell anybody. And meanwhile, I'm sharing this story on podcast now. So it's like, whoop, nope, we're out of the box now. But the other challenging one I had was I was at this neuroemotional technique, NET workshop, and I got a message for the presenter. And I'm like, oh no. Like, I'm just sitting there going, really? Like, how am I going to go? And then I kept hearing this word. And then that the next day after I got this message, and I'm like messaging my spiritual mentor going, because she actually knew the presenter. And she goes, no, he'll be okay with it, but just maybe wait till the end because it's from his partner that had passed. So it could be upsetting. I'm like, okay. But I'm just sitting there and I've made like these little friends. They're like, oh, we're so not jealous of you right now. And I'm like, I have to do this. And he was so receptive, but the biggest thing is whenever you get a message or you get something like that, it's asking permission, right? Because so often people just dump things on us. So I'll be like, hey, I got this message. Is it okay if I share it with you? And he's like, yeah, of course. But some people don't want to know, and that's okay too. And then you've done your job and released yourself from that contract for whatever it might be. So I learned very quickly if my ears started to ringing, I needed to pay attention and listen to whatever was coming through. And if I ignored it, then I would lose my hearing. So like it was really, yeah, it was really powerful. And through that too, this is where the universe leaves you breadcrumbs. So I was listening to a podcast and she was talking about medical intuition. And I was like, oh, what is that? I'm like, so I looked it up and then I just heard this nudge, like, and felt it. You need to do this course. And I didn't have the money at the time. And I was like, well, how? And they go, just put it on the credit card. You'll have the money within a week. I'm like, okay. So I did. And the next day, this client who I'd forgotten about owed this amount of money, dropped this money into my old business bank account. And it was exactly what I needed to cover the course. And I'm like, oh, this is magic. Like if they really want you to do something, it just aligns. And weirdly, the same thing happened when I found my coach now. The money just appeared and like I had the amount of money that I needed to work with him. So there's lots of these little things. So then I started to unpack this medical intuition thing and I realized long term it wasn't for me, but I'd always had this gift where I could feel other people's pain. I just didn't know what it was. So I was really bad in parties and I always put it down to having a dodgy drink or to having dodgy food, but it wasn't. I was feeling everyone else's pain and things like that. And so the biggest thing I learned on that course was how to not be so sensitive to others because it would be really overwhelming. And I still find it really hard to go into the city and be in big crowds, but I put things in place now so I'm not feel like I'm getting hit by a brick wall. So, again, it's all these little things that keep unpacking.
Yeah, you're picking up everybody else's energy, and I was diagnosed with ADD when I was a kid,
Yeah.
and I was trying to explain to people like being in a crowded space, like in a bar or everybody's conversations. Like I'm having a conversation with you, but those conversations are coming in as well. It's extremely difficult to focus because I'm looking for the dopamine hit everywhere, and maybe there's coming like the squirrel moment, so I completely understand it's difficult to focus. I wanted to ask you, I think I read this too, or I listened about, you talked about spiritual epigenetics. I wanted
Yes.
to I wanted to understand. So just so we're on the same page, I have a genetics company that like my I mean, I love doing this. This is my favorite thing I do, but I do have a responsibility because I run this company. We do genetic testing, analysis, epigenetics, but spiritual epigenetics. Like I'm trying to get a definition so people can understand what exactly that is and how it relates to DNA, or if it does at all.
Yeah. Yeah. So this was a journey in itself. So people ask me how I learnt about this, and it was an experience. So I went to a breathwork session, and it had taken me nearly a year to go back to this breathwork session because the first time I did breathwork, it was quite traumatic. Like I had to relive my past life deaths, and I felt everything. So it was very, very traumatic. So it needed to happen because I had to claim back my power. But at the same time, I had to build myself up to go back to this breathwork session. And I knew there was something niggling, right? Again, I was like, there's something else I'm missing. There's something else I need to know. And I knew I had to go back to a past life to get this information. So I'm studying the breath work and I'm going into the trance state. And then I'm like, oh, there's pyramids. I'm like, oh, there's sand. I'm like, I'm going into this past life regression. And I was so excited. And I ended up in this mystery school in Alexandria, because that's what they called them back then, mystery schools. And this person just walked up, like I think it was an elder or a teacher. That's the vibe I kind of got, and hit my forehead like that and went, there you go. There's your memories back. And I'm like, what? And all of a sudden I could see DNA coding like around me. And then more stuff happened in that meditation, but I was like, what is this? They're like, you can work with the DNA now at the quantum level. And I was like, what does this mean? I don't understand. And I'm just like, I'll go with it. So my husband was my guinea pig. And so, so I pulled up, I was like, hey, apparently I can do these things with DNA. And at the time, he was having Rife treatment. So Rife is like frequencies that you can put into your body to counteract things happening. And he was quite unwell. So, but I couldn't work with him up till that point because he'd kind of turned off his spirituality. And that means anything I did, he wouldn't believe, basically. So this practitioner would help him turn that back on. So it was perfect timing, which everything's always divine timing. So I said, hey, do you mind if he goes, nope, do whatever you can to help me. So I messaged this practitioner and she's like, all right, there's like this genetic component, which is carrying all these kind of things, can you do this, this, and this? And I'm like, all right, I'll see. So I pull up the DNA. And for me, I can see it, so I can kind of see it in my mind's eye. And if a DNA is working how it should, it's like this beautiful gold, like light and energy going through, because the DNA is all energy. It's got all energetic connections between the telomeres, between the strands, like everything's charged and has energy. So when it's working beautifully, I see this beautiful gold going through. But when something's not working, it's either like a gray color, like driftwood, like when it's just dead and worn out, or it's red. Like for me, it's like a big red, like you need to get rid of this. Or sometimes it will be flashing. For me, that means like, okay, there's something blocking this and we need to work on it. So I'm there like energetically splicing things out. If anyone's seen Minority Report, when Tom Cruise is doing all those things with his hands, that's what I feel like. So I'm there like doing all these things. And then I was like, okay, and if you do anything in the quantum realm, you have to talk about it to anchor it into this realm. That's the biggest thing I've learned. You have to talk about it. You have to feel it. You have to make sure it comes back here. Otherwise, it just stays in the quantum ether of anything that can be created. So then I come back and I message this practitioner and I said, hey, this is what I've done. And I had this big list. And she goes, I don't know what effing magic you just did, but I've just tested it all again. And this protocol went from 6 weeks to 1 week. He doesn't need this anymore. He doesn't need this anymore. And I was like, oh, I never get this sort of validation. Like this is really cool. And people can argue like, it's like, oh, it's a Rife machine. But for me, it was like, yeah, okay, this is actually, there's something to this. And so then I started doing it with clients. And the biggest thing I noticed was off the sides of the DNA were these cords. And for me, it shows up as cords. For other people, it could be something different. But the cords is what stops the DNA spinning. So the big thing is it has the gold light, but then it also keeps spinning because it's constantly moving, changing, evolving. But these cords stop it. And that's where the epigenetics comes in, because, with the twin studies, when they've separated twins, depending on the environment they grow up with, the cultural beliefs and that sort of thing, it impacts how their genes actually express. And this is very similar in the spiritual realm, depending what trauma you're carrying or what relationships you've been through or whatever it might be, it stops your DNA from shining and coming through at the highest level, in the highest vibration, because our DNA is designed to self-heal. We've just forgotten and have all these things in place that stop it from doing that. So then when I work with clients, some of them will just fall away because sometimes people have cleared the energy or detached from something, but it's just almost like that old, the old cord just wants to hang out there. So some of those I can clear away because they've done the soul contracts up, the lessons done. I'm not interfering with the person's free will. Like it will just fall away. But 90% of the time, there'll be this big cord, Len, like it's huge. And I'm like, that is what we need to work on right now. And I don't do it. I guide my client through it because they need to take back their power from whatever relationship or whatever is stopping them. So, whatever trauma, whatever child thing, whatever it might be. And it's really interesting because I had this one client I was working on. And her DNA was quite dormant because she'd been through so much trauma and so many. She's had like two near death experiences, you know, like all these things. And she said to me, "Why in my family have I got all the stuff expressing, whereas you know all the genetic components, that all the things you don't want, you know, the things that pass through the family line, whereas no one else in my family has?" And I said, "Have they gone through two near death experiences?" And she's like, "No." I said, "That's why, because." People don't realize how much it impacts on how we can express ourselves and how our DNA works because again it's all energy. So if you're, you know, being attacked all the time with these energies that aren't, you know, aligned with who you need to be, then it's going to start shutting things down and things are going to start to express that were previously, you know, recessive and then they become an expressive gene instead.
Yeah, it makes total sense, and you're right. I did a Joe Dispenza retreat not that long ago, and that's one of the things that he measures your epigenetic expression. I think some people get tied into, oh, you know, it's in my genes. Well, it doesn't. So that's fine that it is, but your lifestyle choices can actually help to express those epigenetics based on what you choose, and absolutely agree with you on energy. Wanted to ask you, and I don't know if a lot of your clients are like that, but a lot of people I talk to, maybe it's these days, I don't know, they feel trapped or stuck. Whether it's stuck in their marriage, like you were describing, or they're stuck in their, in their job or their business. It feels like they're treading every single day. It's like Groundhog Day over and again. And people, some of them are in denial of their situation. Some there are accepting at least, but they don't know what to do. What would you suggest somebody take action on? What would be the first thing that somebody needs to do as an action if they actually are feeling stuck like that?
You need to move. If you're feeling stuck, you need to find a way to move out of it, whatever you it's so it seems so simple then, right? But it is because if you stay in that stuck energy, in that stagnant energy, it's because you know, either you need someone to kick your butt to actually get you out of that stuckness, or you need to find a way and often it's courage, right? It's the courage to go, something needs to change and I need to be the one to make the change because you and I could coach them till we're blue in the face, but if they don't consciously want to make the change and take those steps to actually move towards the new life that they want, nothing's going to change. And sometimes you have to take a leap of faith, you know, like, and it's like go all in. And it sounds really weird because we want to toe the line. But if you want to do something small, if it's about your health, have a look what you want to change about your health and pick one thing to focus on because otherwise we get overwhelmed by everything. So it might be, all right, this week I'm going to focus on drinking more water. And that becomes your sole purpose for the week. The next week, okay, I'm drinking more water. What can I add on top of that? Okay, I'm going to have a vegetable every day. I don't know. Some people are very like, I love veggies, but you know, for example, I'm going to make sure I consciously eat vegetables every day. You know, so you might add that on and then you keep adding that on. You know, I'm going to do some breath work. I'm going to go find the sunlight. I'm going to go for a walk outside. And before you know it, after so long you have this beautiful build up of new habits that you have that are sustaining to that goal. If it's a relationship, sometimes the amount of people that came to me, I think it was March Madness of this year, there was really crazy energies happening astrologically and everything else, but I call it the March Madness month. And I had so many men approaching me saying, hey, can you help me and do a reading for me? I think my marriage is falling apart. And I'm like, okay, have you spoken to them? That's what came through every single time. And they're like, No, because sometimes they don't, like we're so afraid, we don't even have a conversation. So if you're having relationship issues, start there. Have a powerful conversation where you actually listen to each other and don't react to each other, because so often we want to prove that we're right. And if you can get that active listening happening, that's like really powerful. But if you're feeling stuck in your business, sometimes you need to drop and stop thinking about it, and then the solution will come, or find someone that can see from the outside perspective. My coach said to me, which was so powerful, a mirror can't see herself. That is often the case with your relationship, your health, your marriage. You know, and if you're curious and you're, problem aware, I've got this problem, I don't know what it is, but I need to find a solution. That is when things will start to show up for you. And it sounds really silly, but I'll go to bed at night, and if I have a problem and I'm like, hey, universe, can you help me with this? So, for example, I'm running a business retreat where people are doing this, like actually becoming unstuck. But I didn't know how to put it into words, what I wanted to share. And I woke up and I was like, and I was like, type, 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 type. And I had these specific, tangible timelines. I had goals. I had and I sent it to my coach. He goes, I am so proud of you because I know you hate these things. I was like, I do. I hate STTs. I hate the word. I'm like, I don't want to go near them. But he goes, this is amazing. And sometimes when your subconscious is looking so hard for a problem, you just need to surrender it, and then the solution comes. How often, I don't know, for me, I'll be in the shower and all of a sudden a problem I've been thinking about for days, I'll get the solution because I've switched off from it. I'm just enjoying being in that moment. So that can be something to do. Sometimes you just need to surrender as well and go, okay. But if you feel like you're slogging away and it's just like draining you, you're not living. You're getting one step closer to death. Every day you should challenge yourself somehow so you can grow. And if you just aim to do that 1% better, and you have to keep at it too. A lot of people don't talk about how habits it takes 22 days to establish a new habit, then another 22 days to integrate it, then another 22 days before it actually gets to the point it's automatic. And a lot of people will give up before it gets to that stage. And you just have to persevere and, just think what the bigger goal is. And if you can tap into that too, that can be really powerful as well.
Yeah, I think it's great advice, because I also think you said a couple of things in here that I want to get a little bit more of. When people are concerned about, they feel stuck in their business, but it's all interconnected. So if you're stuck in your business, if you're not happy, it affects your health. And now you're focusing on your health, and your health's not well, which is going to affect your business, which is going to affect your relationships, and all that's interconnected. So when people, I don't know if you've experienced this, so people come to you with one issue, I'm having an issue with my spouse or whatever it is. Well, if you start unpacking, well, how are you sleeping at night? How are you eating? How is your business? Like all these different things, because they're all interconnected, and it's not just a one kind of siloed thing. So when people approach you, are you looking at more of a sort of a global picture and say, you're coming to me with this relationship, but how is your relationship with yourself, kind of thing?
Exactly. And that's the biggest thing. I'm like, it all starts with you. Like I ran a masterclass the other night called Get Heard, Get Paid. And the biggest thing is like, hey, if you don't actually believe in yourself, no one's going to listen to you no matter what anyway, because it starts with you. Because you, exactly as you said, when your business isn't going what you need to, your health, your family, your relationships, whatever it might be, it does all come back to you, because what's happening on the outside is a reflection of what's happening within you as well. And I have the best example of this, if it's all right. So I was having these issues with my car, and I kept hearing, you need to change the battery and you need to change the tires. And I was ignoring it. And this is a reflection. And I was running on empty too. Like I was pushing myself really hard. I was trying to get my books written. I was doing all these things. I was very sleep deprived, and I was pushing, 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 pushing. My coach is like, you need to rest. You need to rest. You need to rest. You actually need to give yourself permission to rest. So if anyone's listening, it's okay if you need to rest. That's the biggest thing too. And I was pushing and pushing, pushing. Anyway, and I went to drop my husband off at work, and I'm driving, and I went to pull over at the curb. And I swear somebody else grabbed the steering wheel, Len, and pulled me into the gutter. And my husband's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, it wasn't me. And he's like, clearly it was you. Like, you're driving the car. And I'm like, no, like something weird just happened then. And then my car, the tire, managed to hit this bit of the gutter that was broken and it slashed the tire. So I had no choice but to get some new tires. So there's my poor husband changing my tire for me because he can do it really quickly. And then, I drop him off at work. I'm like, oh gosh, now I've got to get new tires. So I did that, arranged it for them to come to my place of work the next day. And I was like, oh, great. I've got new tires, blah, blah, blah. And then my coach is like, how's this reflecting you? I'm like, if I keep running on empty, my tires are gonna, I'm gonna pop, I'm gonna pop. And then to just bring it home, then the tire people were like, yeah, we've done your tires. I said, oh, do you need help finding the car park spot? They're like, that's not the problem, sweetie. They're like, your battery won't start. I'm like, no. So I'm like, really? And I was like, okay, this is such a lesson in itself. Like, I'm clearly running on empty on so many levels. So I did. I just went home and rested that afternoon. But at the same time, I was so looked after because I rang up this place, like a mechanic across the road from my work, and they said we would send somebody out, but we're like down 2 staff members today. They said, why don't you try calling this place? And I didn't even know they existed. And so I rang them up and they said, actually, you're in luck. We have one battery left that will fit your car and we can be out there within 20 minutes. I'm like, oh, thank you. So in the meantime, I'm there posting on Instagram saying, hey, make sure you're not ignoring yourself because this is what will happen on the outside world. So, and exactly what you said, because it's all interconnected, and it's all about like paying attention to like, if you're constantly hurting the same part of your body, why? Because our body has messages in itself too. And it's really cool if you have a niggling pain that keeps staying, like, for example, your hand might be sore, right? So if you search spiritual meaning of right hand pain, and it will tell you what is going on in your subconscious. And Google's actually really quick at getting it to you now because they use AI and all these things. But, and it might be you keep seeing a type of animal, spiritual meaning of a duck, whatever it might be, because if you're not understanding what's happening to you, you can ask for signs and the universe will actually throw them at you. And if you keep ignoring them, they just turn up the volume. So if you keep ignoring that pain in your body, it'll end up in tragedy because that's what needs to happen. And even chronic disease, if you have to be grateful for it. I know that sounds really weird, but if you don't have that disease, you're probably going to die instead. So be grateful that you haven't got to that level and that you still have a chance to figure out what's happening, because the disease shows up, like you were talking about with the DNA and things. When you keep suppressing things or you keep ignoring all these things that aren't aligned with you, then it shows up as dis-ease in your body. And that's when it can happen on the outside in tragedy. It can be car accidents. It can be people passing away in your life. What does that mean? Why, and it's all these things. And I'm not saying you're causing the person passing away, but it can be a time for questioning and self-reflection too.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to listen to, that pain. Too many people, at least in Western culture, they try to get rid of the pain. And I always say, like, pain is a reflection. It's a message. It's telling you something. And if you keep using nerve blockers and you keep using, pain relievers, you're not going to get to the root cause of, what is this?
100%.
Where is this coming from? So I wanted to ask a few questions. I ask all my guests. You talked about music. I'm a huge fan of music. So we'll start with an easy one, hopefully. Do you remember, and if so, what was the very first concert that you attended?
Oh, Craig David.
I love Craig.
And it was in Sydney. Yeah, Craig David, but like the original Craig David. And, and I went with
Before
my
the
cousin.
remixes of Craig David?
Exactly. Yeah, so it was Craig David, and then it was very exciting. It was a very interesting night, I have to say. Yeah.
What was the last concert that you attended?
I think it was Ellie Goulding actually, and I was pregnant at the time, so I actually didn't stay the whole thing because I was just at that point. I'm like, okay, I've had enough now because I was very pregnant, and my sister's like, yeah, let's just go. It's okay. But it was really interesting being pregnant and being at a concert like that too. So, and I think we were the oldest there because there was a lot of teenagers, and I was like, I don't care. I'm just going to own it.
Yeah. All right. So for the next year, you can only listen to 5 albums. And you don't need to remember the name of the album. You can just say Ellie Goulding or whatever it is. What would be those 5 albums or artists?
I love Fearless Soul. Like they just get me at the moment. I don't know if you've heard their stuff, and they do these beautiful remakes with piano. Like I could happily listen to them all the time. Um, I also love Fia. I love her stuff too. It really hits my soul. She's a really cool artist. Who else do I listen to? Then I wouldn't know because I have such an eclectic taste, right? I'll just listen to whatever gets me. Like at the moment, I've been listening to the Wish soundtrack from the Disney movie with my son, and Encanto. And, and it sounds really weird, but sometimes some of those songs they just get you. And I'm listening to Frozen 2. I happily keep listening to Frozen 2 soundtrack because some of the songs in there I'm like, yeah, I'm going into the unknown. So I'm like there singing at the top of my lungs and this is my eclectic taste, right? So I'll go from like, Disney movies to maybe a bit of country with Luke Combs, like whatever. So when you say just 5, I'm like, Fearless Soul kind of covers it because at least they do some them covers as well.
Yeah, 5 is always difficult, but then you
Mm,
think about it's a whole year of only listening to this. There's no other choices. So, and by the way, for me, it changes daily too. But I probably have like 2 or 3
agreed.
staples that I always go to anyway. Okay, final question. Please describe what your room looked like growing up.
Oh, it was purple. And I had this little nook, which was like my little study nook that my parents bent for me. But I had like the posters covering that nook because then I could just have it. And I had like Usher and I had David Boreanaz from Angel and I had Buffy because I loved Buffy when I was younger. I had all these really cool posters in there and then I could shut them off and then hide them kind of from my mum. And then my mum was really cheeky. She'd go stick up like pictures of Brad Pitt. And I'm like, I don't like Brad Pitt. Why are you putting him on my wall? And things like that. And I had like a big bed. And then as I got older, the purple didn't sit with me anymore. So then I ended up getting like gold and like this brown color and like a bright blue doona, which was more reflective of me because I love my bright blues and things like that. So, and I had like a little TV and I had my bookshelf. I always had books. I've always loved books, always been reading books. So, yeah, that was kind of my route. Yeah.
Great. Catherine, where can people engage with you? Where can they find out more? Where can they connect with your coaching practice? Anything else you want to share?
Yeah, I'm really active on Instagram. So you can find me at Willow with the double L healing SH. So you can find me on Instagram, on Threads. It's now on YouTube. I have a podcast called Willow Healing Matters where we talk about all alternative things, which is so much fun. And then I'm also on Substack, so willowhealing.substack.com, where you can subscribe to my newsletter and get an empowerment piece every week, plus the podcast like as soon as they're off the ranks. And then I have a website too, which is willowhealing.org. But because we all pivot in life, that is constantly evolving. So every time you go, you will get a different version of what comes through because it depends whatever I'm focusing on at the moment. So yeah.
Got it. And for my audience, thank you again for all the wonderful comments and reviews. And don't forget to like, subscribe, share, uh, follow, whatever else. I appreciate it. It's been so amazing to listen to people's comments and feedback. So please keep coming. And then also buy my book, Making Cannabis Personal. Appreciate that also. Kath, I really want to thank you. I think it's an incredible work that you're doing. I really believe in just focusing on healing and personal development. I really think that you really highlighted this whole industry. There's differences between what people do. So I'm glad people can pick up on coaching and what that really means to different people. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Len.
Hey, everyone. So, does anybody know what greening out means? I've been the recipient of so many calls over the years of people greening out. That means they took too much THC and had an adverse reaction. So I always recommend other things, but nothing really concrete. Now I can. There's a solution. It is called Antidose. Antidose.com is quick. It's rapid. It works immediately, safe, and effective. So I love my props. If you are toasty or you are burnt, that's the difference. Now, I also love the 1 gummy, 2 gummy, 3 gummy floor. So just be aware, very narrow therapeutic window. You know exactly what you can take now if you've taken too much. Once again, it's Antidose at antidose.com. Get yours today. Hey everyone, thank you for watching and listening. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button, share this episode, and hit that bell. Like, comment. I so appreciate that. And check me out on social under Len May or Len May DNA. Find out more on LinkedIn or lenmaycoaching.com. And remember, everything is personal.